Right.
I said to him, I go, we're gonna go, I can't remember, I couldn't have the voice that later.
I got it.
Just very ironic. That's better than any presentation book I used in college, so. When did you get that?
Hold on, let me see the last one.
I want it for this specific thing.
Like,
I feel like you've done so much since the.
And they do track artists, like, once a month, they come in, they talk. So some of it's.
Fancy.
Some of it's like science.
This is making us thing in the she saw a presentation on that this week. They actually like
I don't know.
so it might be something we want to talk about doing.
Oh, goodness.
We don't count for you, but so
Yeah.
so maybe everybody can look at it. We can maybe get some more information. I have to ask some more about it. How are you?
There's one full day that we're waiting on. I need some
No, we're about a mile south. That's a crow fly.
I didn't know.
Oh.
Like a baby.
No.
You really.
We're waiting for Chris to come in.
No, he's go. He went to the concert. He's already
I was
so
Well, and he just told me and I still didn't pay attention. Okay, all right, we're gonna get started. Would you stand for the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If you could all make sure that your cell phones are either turned off or on silent, please. We are going to start with public forum. Mr. Curtis?
Well, thanks for, sorry I missed last meeting to address what we had talked about the last meeting. We talked about being transparent. I know we did. Last board meeting, not the last one, but 2 board meetings before this, I asked a question and you weren't transparent about it. I'm not gonna call it out onto it, but I know I asked multiple times, was there any other things that had to be addressed onto that packet or the slip that we had, and you absolutely come out and said no. There again, transparency, you told me no, you told the taxpayers no. But yet there was, which we kind of knew there was, so all you had to do was say yes. Gotta be transparent. I'm asking again to do that. Clearly, I understand it was an interesting subject, but it could have said yes. But there again, you said no. Again, transparency, the community is asking for that, and they're not seeing it. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Curtis, you had asked me if there were any other items on the agenda, which is
Any for the agenda.
which on the agenda, which I had answered no. Your email is not listed on here. Would you like us to send you the information about resolutions that are used at the board meeting? Would that help?
Well, the one, I asked if this packet that we had in front of us, if there's anything else that had to be on this packet, and you said no.
Right. There are rules to resolutions, which I'm sure you're aware of. Did you want us to, would you like us to send you that information, or?
I'll give you my email.
Okay. What is it?
Actually, you should have that on there.
It's not, well, if you want to just fill it out at some point before I go. Oh. All right. Okay, thank you. We're gonna move on to, B, the minutes of the regular meeting of November 16th. Could I have a motion, please? Mrs. Allen, and a second by Mrs. Kaiser. Any questions, corrections? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. C, financial reports. Could I have a motion for 1 and 2?
Yeah.
The treasurer's report and the warrants. Thank you, Mr. Dates. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Nodine. How about this one? Any questions? Okay.
Just some comments. The financials still have deficit spending and the transfers have not been brought to the board, that exceeds the threshold. At what point will we see the corrections on the financials as well as transfer requests?
Bill's not here, I don't have an answer for that, but I'll get an answer.
Okay. Another question is, the extra class audit was, conducted last month. It didn't make that agenda. And the audit and the corrective action plan needs to be into SED before our next board meeting. So when will we have that resolved?
I'll get that for you as well.
Is that something we have to approve before it goes in?
And
Yeah,
we have
I-
to approve the corrective action
The
plan.
corrective, because as you say, I remember doing that in the past, so,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, and we might end up with an extra meeting beforehand that might be able to
Right.
get that,
Squeeze it in there.
yeah, squeezing. Anything else, Nancy? Okay, anybody else? Okay, all in favor?
Right.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm opposed.
Okay, so 6-1. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to E, new business. Checking here really quick. E1A through H. Anyone would give me a motion? Mrs. Dingman? And a second? Mr. Nodine? Questions?
Sharon's here to give a brief update on sports.
Perfect.
Sorry about that. I was greeting families as part of the concert. I had some third grade families. They were participating tonight in the Christmas concert. Dual participation, we have 3 confirmed folks that are doing dual participation, which is nice. We also have 2 pending the paperwork, so I'm glad that the board was able to approve through the last board meeting that we would participate in dual participation. We've had some increases in student participation, so we've had to order a lot of new uniforms. So, boys JV basketball, indoor and outdoor track, there was a corrective action that needed to take place of cross-country and track uniforms are different. Bowling has a lot more athletes as well. Cheering, and with the female wrestling program, coach here is sitting here right now. Out of his own money, he purchased 3 quick singlets for his team, but we'll be looking to purchase through Indian River as well. He wanted to make sure that they were suited up. It does take time to go through a uniform rep. We've purchased some new equipment for indoor track. They needed some regulation throws, weighted throws and shot puts. The cheer program needed some safety equipment. So an air mat was purchased, some tumble octagons. We were able to get some pom-poms, some new pom-poms. So I don't know if you folks were at the game on last Friday. It was nice to see them having some new equipment as well. Wrestling started off their tournament. And do you want to speak on that since you're here, Coach? Or do you want me to?
Oh, we had 6 kids compete, 4 of them placed, 2 of them took second place. One of them lost in the consolation finals and the other one placed 5th. So it was pretty good, odds for the number of wrestlers we actually had going. The only reason we're gonna have more is because of class issues or didn't have enough practices yet because of the way that the season fell out. Some of the girls weren't able to start until it was set up.
So they're off to a great start. Boys modified basketball is wrapping up their season. Being a modified coach, the coach has worked very hard on developing skills, teamwork, and sportsmanship, and the importance of the modified values that the section has. Boys varsity and junior varsity, I saw some of you folks in the stands last Friday, had their season opener with Marion, which was nice, and the crowd was very large. I didn't know it was gonna be that big for basketball on the first game. The girls modified, and I'm sorry, the wrestling modified program will start after the holiday recess. Girls junior varsity opened up against Geneva, and they had a very large victory with only playing 7 players. But they did very well, and the crowd was pretty big for a JV game, for only just having a JV game. And they had a very decent crowd today. I'm not certain the outcome of the game because I went down to the concert.
I left before it was over too.
Oh, okay.
It was close.
Okay, sorry about that. And the girls varsity will open up their season on December 9th against the big rival of NRW. Bowling has started off well. Again, we have large numbers in bowling. I know that the girls program took the points. I think that's how you say it in bowling. I'll have to double check with Mr. Pitts. And some other male bowlers did well. Indoor track had their season opener yesterday. There was some very good running according to Coach Goodwin in regards to, I think they might have taken a first and a second. I think that's what Coach said at practice tonight. And varsity track opens up their season on Saturday. It's nice that cheering, to see the traditional go to basketball games, cheer on for those teams, because I guess a lot of schools are not doing that. So it's nice to see that we're still making that school community spirit continue on at home basketball games. Their competitions don't start until after the holiday recess as well, and they go boom, boom, boom with a lot of their competitions. Other than that, that is all that I have. Unless you have questions.
Questions?
I do have a quick, you talked about the cheer and getting the mat, was that for the stunting?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's an air mat and it's
Safety.
also not octagonal to help them with tumbling. Yes, it's a safety
And
net.
the safety thing, yeah. And the other thing you just mentioned, it's escaping me right now. It'll come back to me later. Thank you.
What are the numbers for basketball looking like for the girls?
Girls varsity, what I had from the coach was that they have 8 with the manager, so if that manager participates in practice, they are able to participate in the game as well. And let me just double check, I believe they have 8 for JV on the roster as well, from the information I got from the coach.
So that's technically 7 varsity and 8 JV?
8 JV is what coach gave me on the roster, and 8 or 9 for varsity. Like, they have 8, but the manager is gonna be a manager until they may or may not play.
Okay, so it's 9 and then, okay, including the manager, so we have 8.
Meaning the manager wants to play, but I don't believe that that's the intention.
No, I don't think so.
I do know that this person has participated in some practices.
How many varsity games are we at for the girls? How many do we have scheduled for them?
I would have to give that information to you. There was reaching out to other ADs. I know that coach wanted some more games. Reaching out to those ADs, some have gotten back to me and some have not gotten back to me.
Have we gotten to 20?
His schedule is not full, but I do know that he has the league games in it and some extra games as well, but I'm not certain of the count. But again, reaching out to the ADs of the teams he wanted to play, I'm still pending those games.
How does it work with sectionals if our varsity team doesn't have the same number of games, like the 20 games that everybody else in the section has? How does that work going into sectionals?
It's my understanding that they have to have their league games in, and non-conferences would be a little different. I don't think they would be penalized in any way, shape, or form for sectionals. Mr. Van Orman, are you that far out of being an AD or Mr. Dates?
Well, it depends on, now, it's a good question, it depends on whether they're using a point system or not. When they use that's been used in the past, I can't tell you whether they're still using
I
the
don't-
point design system.
I will look that up and respond back to you in regards to the point system. with
'Cause
that.
the
I
whole-
have reached out to ADs in regards to games and of what the coach wanted for certain competitors, and they have not returned.
They've used several different types of point systems over the past years, and you get more points to beat a bigger team or a larger
Yeah.
school, and lesser points if you're only beating a smaller school, and, and they've gone a couple different angles. I don't know what they're doing now.
What's the plan if we don't get all of our league games scheduled?
We do have all our league games scheduled. There's a couple school districts that are together,
Okay.
so Sodas and NRW are together, and Williamson and Marion are together. So you might not see separate Marion or separate Williamson on the schedule,
Gonna be a
but
tough
they
game.
have merged together.
Okay.
So pom-poms and mats are, required, and it's also a safety issue. Mr. Popel purchased singlets, also required. Is he gonna be reimbursed for this?
That I don't know, I could check. It was something that he did on his own, and we can discuss with the business department in
Yeah.
regards to that.
Are uniforms all set for every sport at this point?
For this year, it is my understanding that they will be all set. There was some, lack of a better phrase, some glitches that occurred prior to me in regards to the purchase of uniforms. I will say the boys JV will only have one color this season because the basketball uniforms are extremely expensive. So once they come in, I'll inform the other schools that we're only wearing a certain color. Just at the AD's meeting today, there are some schools that have their JVs only a certain color as well. So it's not a new practice to say, this is the only color I have. What I've done also is I've put together the budget requests, if you will, for uniforms if there's glitches, which there still are, but they can wait until the July 1 budget. For example, there wasn't enough soccer uniforms. So I'm buying the rest of those soccer uniforms with the July 1 budget. We'll buy the rest of the JV basketball uniforms with the July 1 budget. I've already spoken to the uniform rep in regards to what we'll project for the next year, Dr. Macaluso, and I have sat down and chatted about those things as well. So whatever the glitches were that occurred prior to me, I'm trying to rectify those as much as we can with the budget that I have currently, and then we'll do that when the July budget comes around. So the uniform rep knows that in May-ish, that I'm gonna throw some things his direction, and then not purchase until July 1.
Will the uniforms that you've ordered be in before the end of their season?
Pushing very hard for that, yes. And I'm hoping, we do have the recess holiday coming up, you know how companies shut down during that time. It is hopeful that for all the winter sports, they will have all their uniforms.
Do the spring sports have all of their uniforms?
Funny thing is, baseball and softball came in August or September. So I will recount the numbers to see if we have enough. I don't know why they came in that early, but they did. And indoor track and outdoor track wear the same uniform. So if we don't get the corrective action with the track for indoor, we will have it for outdoor. Some of these things were out of my control. I'm trying to rectify those as soon as possible.
It came to me.
I was gonna say something before I kept moving, so.
It came to me. With the hiatus through COVID and all, some things went on the burner, and with the cheer, that's great, the kids are out and active. Are those cheers the cheer squad or cheer team, whatever you want to define it, gonna be only at our home games for both boys and girls? Doing the home games, or just travel with the boys, or how's that being done? Because many schools have gone to just cheering for both at
Um,
home?
I definitely know that cheering for boys, I can check with the cheer coach to see if, it all depends on schedules of stuff as well.
Mhm.
Definitely boys, but not traveling.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on E1A through H? I have one quick question now, because Kim had just asked me. B, the appointment for the JV indoor track coach. We just appointed this particular person as a volunteer, and now they're actually in a role of a JV coach. So they're no longer a volunteer coach, is that what
For
I'm?
cross-country, they were a volunteer, and now they're a paid, because I believe it's in the budget of that being a paid position.
But so it's just a move into a different role, right? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So we would have approved this coach last meeting in the middle of a season. Does that sound right? I'm quickly trying to look.
I think volunteers are anytime.
Anytime, okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Dates, only at boys' games. I just got information from the coach.
Might be just something that might want to be considered for equitable opportunities, that both genders get the same treatment. Many schools have gone to that. It actually got started back in the early 2000s when there was such a budget crunch. That precipitated the need to be able to eliminate a bus. But we fixed it then by having them cheer both, and it went very well. Actually got more people coming into the gym for the girls' games out of that and supporting them. Food for thought.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay.
Roll call.
New clerk?
Mr. Bates,
Yes.
Mrs. Bliss,
Yes.
Mrs. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Nona,
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman,
Yes.
and Mrs. Kaiser,
Yes.
and Ms. Medley.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're gonna move on to E2 classified staff. Could I have a motion for E2 A through F? Thank you, Mrs. Allen, and a second by Mrs. Kaiser. Any questions on this group? When you're ready.
Okay, Mrs. Allen,
Yes.
Mrs. Bliss,
Yes.
Mr. Bates,
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman,
No.
no?
No.
Okay. Mrs. Kaiser,
Yes.
and Mr. Nona,
Yes.
and Mrs. Medley.
Yes. Okay, moving on, E3, the CSE and CPSE recommendations. Could I have a motion, please?
Yeah.
Mr. Dates, and a second by Mrs. Dingman. Any questions on these? Julia's got her glasses on, so she's ready to ask or answer. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, moving on. E4, the first amendment to the 2018 restatement of, I'm gonna say MCA, because this is long, to provide health benefits. Can I have a motion, please? Thank you, Mrs. Dingman. Second by Mr. Nodine. Questions? When you're ready.
Mr. Nodi,
Yes.
Mrs. Bliss,
Yes.
Mrs. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Dates,
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman,
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser, yes, Mrs. Medley.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, E5, the adoption of the 23-24 budget preparation schedule. Everybody's favorite time of year, Mr. Dates, thank you. Second by Mrs. Allen. Any questions on this?
So last year, there was a lot of discussion at the board meeting after the presentation. And it all occurred during the board meeting. It would be nice if there was a date for just to have a budget meeting to go through those instead of it just being at the board meeting.
like a separate meeting for us or a separate
Yes,
meeting for the
because-
public?
So no, it could be, no, of course for the public.
Okay.
Yeah. Cause it looks like we're gonna present the draft for the maintenance budget on Wednesday, February 15th. And then we have the whole, at the March 15th meeting is budget work session for the board. It's optional. And is that for everything else? I mean, we're talking about maintenance, and then everything else is a catch-all, instructional, transportation.
So maybe we
admin.
should take advantage of that optional day then, or maybe we could even out the groups or,
I know that's why Bill wanted to put that in there, because he thought you might want more of an opportunity to discuss that, so he
Okay.
wanted to add that optional date in there.
it's a good point. And maybe if you talk to him, maybe we could figure out, maybe it could be maintenance and transportation on one night and instruction and, you know, even them out so they're not.
Right.
What do you think about that?
And the debt service, because everybody knows what their debt service is years in advance, so.
Okay, so, so I would say if we could all, make a note that the 15th looks like an additional meeting day, see if that works for everybody. Obviously got some time.
So there'll be 3 meetings that month.
Right, in a row, for everyone's.
March
First, 8th, and 15th, 3 weeks in a row.
For before, actually.
Ooh, thanks for pointing that out.
4. What's the matter with that?
Yeah. I love Wednesdays here.
Oh, no,
First is just a submission. Well, let's look at that date, or maybe the optional date could become a different optional day,
Right.
so it wasn't every week. I'm trying to just look at the other gaps. Okay, well, if you wouldn't mind talking to Mr. McDonald, then,
Yeah.
okay,
We'll talk about that.
thank you.
Yep.
Other questions about the schedule or
Kind of a
ideas?
squeeze, because, I mean, they got, when you look, I mean, they have to do their work on their front end, preparation, and then, you know, it might be a thought, just as we throw this on the table, maybe a second one in February, and then less in March.
Flush them a little
And
bit.
flush it
Yeah,
out, you
yeah,
know.
I would agree with that.
Because they still have to be able to have all the time. I mean, January's gonna be a busy month of work, and then April comes up fast.
February is difficult because we're meeting on the 15th and the following week then is break.
Right, so
Oh, that's
maybe,
right.
but maybe though, with this being a aspect of concern, maybe we need to rearrange those meetings in February, maybe,
Or maybe do between January and the February 15th, stick one in there.
yeah.
And then,
you know,
yeah.
You know,
But is that too soon to be able to discuss budget
Yeah.
items?
I'll have to
Do it.
discuss it
Yeah.
with Bill, what he can have
Maybe,
prepared by
yeah,
when.
maybe some options
Yeah. There you go.
as far as,
because all those
Maybe
options.
push our
Right.
That's
regular
right.
meeting that
Yeah.
week. And then do a
Um,
budget.
whatever, if you can come up with a couple
Okay.
options,
All right.
that would be great.
Will do.
Should we just table this,
Mhm.
rather than vote to approve as is?
Does it need to be approved tonight? I'm looking around that,
It's
hopefully
just a
someone
budget,
knows.
it's a budget word, document.
Well, so, I mean, would it be better to approve it with the optional date and then revise it with new optional dates, so at least we can
I-
hammer down the,
Yeah, I think so.
That's, because at least then
Yeah.
you got your upfront dates
your
also.
your
Yeah.
solid ones, and then we can go
Yeah.
back and
Yeah.
revise?
Yes.
Okay,
That works.
all right. Other questions? Okay, when you're ready.
Mrs. Bliss?
Yes.
Mrs. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Dates?
Yeah,
Mrs. Dingman?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mr. Nordheim?
yes.
And Mrs. Vanderman?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, E6, the appointment of the lead search consultant, Dr. Ramos. Could I have a motion, please? Thank you, Mrs. Allen, second by Mrs. Bliss.
Okay.
Any questions? This is pretty straightforward, like we talked about. Okay,
Mrs. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Dates?
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mrs. Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Nodine?
Yes.
And Mrs. Madigan?
Yes.
Okay.
I see you're very quick. Moving them right along. If it's nerves, it looks totally professional and not, so. Okay, moving on. E7, the approval of the new organizational chart. Could I have a motion, please? Thank you, Mrs. Kaiser. And a second? Thank you, Mr. Nodine. Any questions on this?
This is a presentation from you, this this
Yes.
design. You know, help us all, help us all to understand why, you know, how you see this as a better design of operation.
So the basic difference is the supervisors under the business administrator. That's the way most school districts organize this. It's an awful lot on one person to have all of that, especially with a new superintendent coming in. We want to make sure we have proper separation of duties and workload.
Okay. It makes sense.
Yeah, that's the main
Yeah.
change.
Any other questions? Yes? Okay. Okay, when you're ready.
Mr. Nodine?
Yes.
Mrs. Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Dates?
Yes.
Mrs. Dignan?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mrs. Allen? And Mrs. Madigan?
Yes. Thank you. E8, approval of the responsibilities and salary increase for William McDonald. I have a motion, please.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Dates, and a second by Mrs. Allen. Okay, so this is directly associated with the last resolution that we just passed. Any questions?
I want to make sure I'm understanding. So this looks like we're adding responsibilities to Mr. McDonald. Were these responsibilities not part of the posting that he was hired for?
That's correct. So he was hired to not have the normal responsibilities of a business official, and his salary was reduced due to that when he was originally hired.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
When was Mr. McDonald hired?
2019? It was 2019.
3.5 years ago.
Other questions? When you're ready.
Okay. Mr. Nodine?
Yes.
Mrs. Bliss? Mrs. Bliss?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mr. Dates?
Yes.
Mrs. Dignan?
Yes.
Mrs. Allen?
Yes.
And Mrs. Madigan?
Yes. Thank you. Dr. Macaluso, do you have any additional items?
I do not. I'm all set.
Okay. Were there any questions for the administrative reports?
I do. I still see in the grants that we have transportation under the grants in the federal funds. It had been asked if those items were already purchased, and we were told no. So, do you know why we would still have those items in the grants?
I do not,
Okay,
but we can find out.
thanks.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Something that came to my mind as we did that number 4 under classified under the MAC or the municipal agreement.
Yes.
And all it did, not about that as much, but we had a municipal agreement that was being worked on with the town of Woka, or the
Oh, the building.
the building, and to, you know, have a shared salt storage and all, and is that news to you, or?
No.
that-
Oh.
That's still in the works.
Okay.
That's a good answer then, because I had forgotten about it too.
Yes, town supervisors stopped in to, see me a couple of weeks ago. They may have found additional monies for that,
Okay.
so we may not have to use our grant funds for that, so we're
That's
still,
a good thing.
we're still working on it, but
Yeah.
it might be, less to the district than we originally thought.
Great.
From your experience, did you have that at all? Like a municipal, I know many districts do, it depends on where they're located
Yeah.
and what works for them. And it seemed like it makes good sense here.
Yes,
uh,
definitely.
To not have separate facilities, but.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay,
It's exciting to hear that it's still, because I had forgotten until you just
Yeah.
said something.
there you go.
Okay, other questions about administrative reports?
I don't think it was in here. Do we have a play this year?
In the works, it's in the beginning stages. We
Okay.
do have someone hired for drama.
Okay, great. Anything else? Anyone?
I guess,
Oh.
we wanna, how's the math, huh? Because you hear that about, the teaching position.
We have a plan for the one course. Do you wanna talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so right now, we're still kind of at a holding pattern. So reaching out to Cuba Community College, they recommended that I call over to City BOCES, Oswego County, and speak with Melissa Daniels. She's in charge of the virtual learning through Cuba Community College. So what Dr. Nicholas is handing you is actually a proposal for a distance learning, room in the high school. What we can do is we can have someone supervising the room, and then a teacher from Cuba Community College will teach the class synchronously to those students that are signed up for statistics. They would still receive the full credit they would have had for the year. Additionally, what you'll see in this proposal is that for the remainder of the year, we can also have some kids opt to take Sociology 101, which is an intro class, and Business 232, which is a online social media marketing class. And so we can get some of those kids out of study hall, and we can get them some college credit, and that is an asynchronous learning model. I believe that for the remainder of this year, if we are not able to hire a math teacher, this could be the solution for the remainder of this year, and we still keep that option open, looking for that fourth math teacher. I'm still hopeful we get that math teacher, because I am in need of AIS support because of the way I had to switch the schedule, and we don't have that going on right now, but I need it. But in the meantime, this helps move forward with a plan for at least those students that were taking statistics. And there's some money in a grant, and there's more information on how that would be funded and whatnot in the paper you just received. So,
But you wouldn't run this through the grant,
what's that?
because it's BOCES distance learning.
So we had a conversation about that, whether we would run it through BOCES Aidable, and after looking at the option, we were thinking to run it through, because we haven't used it, the American Rescue Plan Learning Loss Grant.
You can put other things in there from the general fund to offset that. Why wouldn't you wanna capture the BOCES aid for that?
So we just said, I'm not a specialist in grants, I won't
Right.
claim to be that. So in meeting, Mr. Smiley, myself, Mrs. Hay, Dr. Macaluso, and Mrs. Divini met, and that's what we were proposing, was to take it from that. And, I'm not a specialist in grants, it was recommended that we take it from there.
Yeah, we discussed that the use of that money is so specific that this might be a
Very
good,
familiar with it.
yeah, I'm sure you are, so, I mean, we hadn't settled 100% on that, but we're thinking that that might be a good use of those funds.
What are the kids doing right now who are in statistics?
So they started into the first 10 weeks, and right now they are in a study hall. Unfortunately, I just, fanning it out, I don't have a math teacher that is qualified to teach that statistics class at this time. Not for lack of trying, and my current staff, not comfortable teaching that level of math. So right now, they've been in study hall, since Kim left about a month ago. And the hopes is that right within the semester, they'll be able to jump right back into that. What she was teaching in the beginning was a high school basis of statistics, so it wasn't the actual college work yet, so they technically are not behind. She was preparing them for what was coming for the second semester, so.
So this is not possibly something soon?
Yeah.
Like after break maybe or
Yeah,
something?
as soon as we talk a little bit more about this, as soon as we give them the go, they can come in and put the
Oh,
equipment in
okay.
the room. I've already scouted out the high school, I believe I have space.
For these other courses as well?
Correct.
Okay.
Is this the same model as the Spanish
It is not.
situation?
It is not Accelerate U. This is actually, for the statistics, it's actually gonna be live synchronous teaching, in an interactive room. I have not seen this, but, I've heard of it. My own daughter went through one like it. So there's screens in the room, there's cameras in the room. BOCES comes in and outfits the entire room. Mrs. Dingman, I think you have one in your district that's pretty outfitted.
Yep.
It's quite the design. And then the asynchronous classes, the students, can come out of the study halls, come during that time, and there will be a person in that room to help keep them on track. And so it is not Accelerate U. My experience with Accelerate U for the 2 courses that we did that for, that it was not as successful for our students. This here is a much more supported model, and I've seen some success with that in other districts, so that's an opportunity for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you for all the work you've put into coming up with a
Yeah,
solution.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's important, I think, for, you know, those students, obviously, you know, seniors and that are counting on some of this.
Yeah.
you know.
College is expensive.
Well, college, yeah,
Yes.
and this is really, it just throws a glitch into what we had been doing for the college readiness courses and all. And if anything we can do to capture back, and this might set the tone for something in the future, for offering more opportunities.
Absolutely.
Yes, the opportunity, they said, could be 15 to 20 more classes that we could offer, and students can be sitting next to each other and taking 2 different courses asynchronously, and so just a lot of opportunity for things that and it would only be things that our teachers couldn't provide.
Right.
Thank you.
Don't pay healthcare.
Anything else for public session today? Okay, I will take a motion to move into executive for negotiations matters. Mrs. Dingman, and a second by Mrs. Kaiser. Thank you very much.
That was a heck of a segue I gave.
What's that?
You did, it was.
Yes, please.
Matt, we didn't have time to put it on the agenda, so.
Yeah.
I was gonna bring it up in executive
Yeah.
session, but you.
But this is, I think this is helpful, you know, so.
Yeah, yes, it is.